Today we're heading to what is colloquially referred to as the Venice of the North, to the land of Rembrandt and Van Gogh, to a place where almost a quarter of the land has been reclaimed from the sea and has famed interconnecting canals. And importantly to the theme of this podcast, it's a land of action, where cycling dominates and is key to its personality. Have you guessed it yet? Here's one final hint. It's where Heineken's from. That's right, we're going to the Netherlands, and I can't wait to share it with you. So let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. I'm really surprised that in 5 years, I've not yet covered one of Europe's most popular destinations where over 20 million people visit each year. So for the next 2 episodes, we're going to visit 2 important areas of Holland. Both trips are based in the exciting and beautiful city of Amsterdam, and both trips have completely different personalities. Today, we're going to cover the Hansa region of Holland. This area is south and east of Amsterdam. Our guest today, Jim, went with his wife and my new affiliate, Boat Bike Tours. And out of the many boat bike tours they've done together, this one was his wife's favorite. As a listener to the Active Travel Adventures podcast, Boat Bike Tours has given us an exclusive promo code, ATA50, ATA50, and that'll get you €50 off any of their extensive list of European boat and bike tours. Of course, I'll put links and notes about this on the website and in the show notes. So here is my conversation with Jim. Today we're going to go to the Hansa highlight area, so leaving from Amsterdam. And so again, I've had Jim come on the program today to tell us all about the trip. Welcome to the program, Jim. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, Kit. This will be great.
Before I start, I like people to get an idea who they're speaking with. So can you kind of tell us who Jim is, maybe how old you are, how you got into adventure travel and all these biking tours, and just so we have a little background.
76. I've been doing these tours. I counted them up this morning. Looks like I've done 6 of them so far, spread all over Europe, it seems. And I like to travel this way because I like the adventure of exploration, of poking around. You never know what you're going to find around the next corner. And boat bikes certainly gives you the ability to do that.
Yeah, and I like too, and when we say boat bikes, you are actually on a ship. So that's your hotel moves with you. So you don't have to keep packing and unpacking, which is kind of nice.
Well, that's the great part about it. Absolutely.
Let's start by going a little bit about, maybe give us an overview of what is this region like, and then we'll drill down a little bit day by day so people have an idea of what you do each day. And then I'm going to ask about food and the crew and all that kind of stuff. So can you tell us why this particular region of the Netherlands?
The Hansa region was actually recommended to me by one of the tour leaders on a previous trip I did. And I said, of all the tours you lead, which one is your favorite? He said, the Hansa region. I said, why? He said, it is the most overall view of the Netherlands that you can get. And he said, that's why I like it. And I would absolutely agree with him because I think most people think of the Netherlands as windmills and canals. And the Hansa region is actually a very wooded area. Of the 6 tours I've done, for my wife, it was her favorite tour. We're biking through woody areas, hilly areas, parts of the Netherlands none of us knew existed. And it was a real surprise.
It's interesting you say that because on Trustpilot, which is a great review system to get an idea of tours, their 5-star rating has a tremendous amount of reviews. So it's really difficult to get a 5-star because there's always somebody that will never give a 5. And for them to have it was actually a 9.2 out of 10 is extraordinarily high. So that says a lot for this trip.
Yes, it does.
So you're starting in Amsterdam. And on the previous program, we suggested at least staying a few days in Amsterdam while you're there, going all the way over there. So walk us through what happens on the trip. So you get to the boat. What do?
We boarded the boat in the afternoon, and it leaves from the heart of downtown Amsterdam, so it was an easy walk from the train station to get to the boat. And the boat traveled up the river that afternoon, and we docked that evening, and we started our tour the next morning. And as with most boat bike tours, you get off the boat in the morning, and the boat will travel along, and then pick you up sometime in the late afternoon. And there are very many different routes that you can take, from very easy to, longer ones. Or if that day you want to stay on board the boat and decide not to bike, that's fine also.
And this is a self-guided, but they're giving you the GPS and the maps and all that. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, you have the option of either having a tour leader, which we did, or you have a GPS, which is a turn-by-turn voice guidance, which is great. They also gave us a terrific map that also detailed all the routes. One can't believe the number of bike routes solely dedicated to bikes that exist in the Netherlands. It's amazing. They're well signposted. So even if you got lost, which would be really tough, it's always an adventure and an easy way to find your way. And that's what I advise people to do. You never know what's around that next turn.
Right. And if you do get in a jam too, there is what your guide is out there on that pathway somewhere, and you have their cell phone number, so you can WhatsApp them.
Absolutely. So, if you're in dire straits, just call that number. And of course, their local people are always willing to help. So it's getting lost I don't see it as a problem. I see it as a fun adventure.
Definitely. And this is a very biker friendly country, as you mentioned as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I always thought that the bikes just existed in Amsterdam. No, they are all over the Netherlands, and they're actively used for commuting, for shopping. I mean, you see local people in the Netherlands really using it as a viable form of transportation. It's very inspiring.
It sure is. And I like too, you mentioned that most days you have a choice of either a longer bike ride or a shorter one, depending on how you're feeling or depending on the weather. And sometimes your partner may not want a bike, so they could also just stay in the boat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if the weather's inclement and you don't want to go, just stay on the boat. The scenery is just as fine from the boat. And I might also add the option of having a regular bike. And by the way, the bikes are first class, good commuter bikes. Or my wife enjoys having an e-bike so she can bike faster than me, and I can huff and puff to try to keep up with her.
There you go. In fact, I did my Croatia tour with boat bike tours, and I opted for the e-bike, and I was glad because there's times that you just want that little extra juice.
Absolutely.
Cool. So on the second day, you actually start your cycling tour. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did and what you saw and how that first day goes?
Well, the first day was the beginning of surprise of how different the landscape is, because you're biking, like I said before, through a lot of wooded areas. And for history buffs, you go through an incredible area where there was a large World War II military operation to try and capture a town of Arnhem. And it was popularized in a movie called The Bridge Too Far. And you bike through these huge fields where they put paratroopers into. And there's a lot of monuments, and it's a very, very historic area. And at the end of the day, you actually end up in Arnhem, where there is a museum covering what happened on that tragic day and the bridge that they were trying to capture. So the name of the operation was Operation Market Garden, and it was mainly led by British forces. So if you're a history buff, this is a really important area.
And I see too in my notes, it was actually the largest airborne operation in history. I mean, that's saying something.
Yeah, it really does. It was the British 1st Airborne Division, and unfortunately, it was not a successful one, but it still goes down in the annals of military history.
Definitely. And so before we get much further too, is this fairly flat or how hard is this?
Oh, it's very, very flat, and it's through a lot of wide open spaces of fields, which is why it was chosen for this area. But again, very wooded area, a lot of wildlife, cranes, and things like that. So it's very, very pretty.
Very nice. And so what meals do you do? How do you handle the food part? When do you eat and how does all that work?
Well, in the morning after breakfast, you're allowed to package up a picnic lunch to take with you. Or the option is available if you want to stop in town, which we did on occasion, and just grab lunch at a cafe. The option is yours. And the meals are very, very good, very hearty, great breakfast to get you fortified for the ride that day. And of course, the evening meals, well, that's a topic in itself.
Okay, we'll get to that, I guess, a little bit later. So basically, all your meals are covered, and your boat is your hotel, and you get your bike. And you can actually bring your bike or rent one, depending on what your situation is.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can actually rent your bike, and you can even specify if you want a special bike. It just has to be done in advance, but they will definitely accommodate you.
So I'm looking at the itinerary. So the next day you have either 27 or 35 miles. That's around the longest of the days that you tend to do. But it looks like you have some options to go into some of the hamlets. Or can you talk a little bit about how they work that?
Oh yeah, so you've got a lot of little hamlets you bike through. Sometimes we would stop for coffee and a pastry, or even a local beer. I remember one time we stopped at their specialty was herring, and those who love herring, they had a little stand alongside the canal, and we sat down and had beer and herring. And in the evening, if you're docked in town, which a lot of times we are, you have that option of going in and doing a more exploration.
Nice. Nice. Did you ever feel rushed that you had to hurry up and catch the boat?
Oh no, never, never.
So you've always got ample time to savor because you're there to see the country and meet the people and all that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Good. Yeah, and it looks like that day too. One of the key things is there's a town famous for its spicy gingerbread. So hopefully folks will have a chance to try that while they're around. Let's talk a little bit about the boat itself. How big is it and what kind of facilities are there? Do you feel cramped? Do you have space or what's the deal there?
I like to say that when you're on board the boat, you're there to in your room to sleep. So it's the accommodations are adequate. You have enough place to store your stuff. You have your own ensuite bathroom and shower. But the beautiful part is you really want to be out on the deck, and there's deck areas where you can lounge either undercover or out in the open, and you're there to see the scenery. So that's I would say the rooms are for sleeping, and you can also sit in the dining area if you want.
Yeah, in the dining room, is it assigned seats or do you get to mix and match? Because it looks like the ship will hold 70 people.
I think that's one of the fun parts is the various nationalities that you will meet. There was one other American couple. There was a German group who do this every year as a group. And I like the international aspect of it. One of the things I like about Boat Bike is that international aspect. There are other tour groups that will just book the whole boat, but then you'll be there with just that group of people from that country, for example, from the United States. And the reason I go to Europe is to meet other people and enjoy their cultures.
Definitely. And it helps that we speak English, which seems to be the international language.
Oh, yeah.
That if not, you do pantomime and it still makes it fun.
Yes, that's true.
So in the mornings, do you decide how you're feeling, decide if you're going to do the long ride or the short ride, or do you have to tell them in advance, or how does all that work?
It's up to you. I mean, even if there's a group leader like we had, if you had the option of saying, gee, I want to take the longer ride, you're welcome to do that.
And did you find the boat bike tour guide accommodating? And let's say you had a special interest and you want to go do this or do that, or they want to keep you rigid. How does all that work?
Oh, yeah, they're very accommodating. For example, one of the things that I do when I travel, and it's just me, is I always like to bring back local honey. I mean, honey is as unique as wherever the hives are. And I told our guide, I saw some signs along the way for local honey at the farms. Can we stop and get some? And of course, we did.
And on the landscape too, you talked about it was woodier than you thought, but a lot of times you're along the Rhine or sometimes you're in the forest. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing as you're riding along.
Well, like I said, there's a lot of wildlife. We saw deer, there's geese, storks. And as you bike along, you come through these little towns. And the Netherlands has done a big historic job of preserving their windmills that they're well known for. So I think there's still like 800 original windmills. And it really was fun to sort of come around the corner, see a little town on the canal. And sure enough, there's the big old windmill. And one of them they were restoring, which was really fantastic because you got to really see how the inner workings worked. And what was really fascinating is they thatched the roofs of those windmills. And there was a guy thatching them. They said, how many people still know how to do that. And he said, well, that's the sad part. We're getting older, and there's very few people who know how to thatch a roof anymore.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. So it sounds like the locals are very willing to chat with the foreigners and all that.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Very good. Yeah. So it's always nice to go where where they're friendly and you're welcomed.
Oh, yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about the architecture too. So from doing some of my homework, it looked like there was a big push to develop that area and some of the port villages during the medieval time and then the Renaissance period as well. So you've got an interesting contrast of architecture.
Yes, I've done a lot of traveling in England, and I have to say I've never seen so many thatch roofed houses as I saw in the Netherlands. And you also see a lot of what I would call a Tudor type style house, which is the wood and then plaster in between. That seems to be a very common architectural motif that you see.
Do the homes have a lot of gardens, like the cottage gardens that you'll see in England?
The Dutch are known for their flowers, known for tulips, known for anything they can grow. A lot of vegetable gardens, flower gardens. Oh yeah, that's almost a hallmark of being Dutch.
And as a gardener myself, the weather's always really important to me. What time of year did you go, and what can you tell us about the weather, and what kind of weather did you experience?
We were very, very fortunate. We had great weather. It was in early spring into May, which meant there was still a lot of bulb type of flowers growing, between tulips and narcissus and daffodils. And we had terrific weather.
Yeah, and it looks like it's pretty moderate temperatures even throughout the year. It doesn't look like it gets overly cold even in the winter. And although one thing is, because you're so far north, you have a ton of sunlight in the summer. You were there in the spring, so you had more nighttime. But in the middle of the summer, it's 17 hours of daylight.
Yeah, it's you got to realize the summer solstice is June 21st, so the days are getting longer and longer. So in May, you're coming right up on that June date. And you're right, after June 21st, the days still stay long. So yes, you have a lot of daylight to deal with.
Yeah, and if you want to see the bulbs that Jim's talking about, the big time for that is late March into April.
Exactly.
And actually, Boat Bike Tours has some dedicated tours to that, or you can do a little side tour as well.
Yeah.
If it's important for you to see those bulbs, that's the time that you want to go.
We went about a week early just for that. And the most famous of those bulbs is an area called Keukenhof, which is not very far from the Amsterdam airport and just outside of Amsterdam proper. And they run dedicated buses to Keukenhof. And that's definitely should be on somebody's bucket list.
That's not part of this tour, but can you tell us a little bit about what you saw or how all that works?
Well, Keukenhof is basically a growers display park. And it's where the growers go to display their bulbs that they have to sell. So the public obviously is invited to, stroll through them and look at them. So you are absolutely seeing the best of the best that a grower has to exhibit, because he's advertising and showing you off what he has. And his displays are just spectacular, just spectacular. All those travel posters that you saw in the past, that's Keukenhof.
Wow. No, that's been on my list for so long. I'm going to have to go take this tour for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, after talking to you in Charlotte the other day, too, I was like, wow, I just need to bump this up. So you've traveled so much. How does the Hansa region compare with some of your other boat bike tours?
Well, like I said before, for my wife, and we've done 6 tours, it was her favorite. Her favorite. For me, the Mosel trip was my favorite. And if you like Riesling wines, the Mosel's the place to go. And that's all these cute little German towns. But everybody has different likes and preferences.
Yeah, and as you said, that German group went year to year to year, same tour. Yeah, interesting. So it's looking like most days, how long are you actually on the bike? So most days look like around 30 miles-ish would probably be an average.
Yeah, people have to realize this isn't a race. This is an adventure. This is a tour of exploration. So you pretty much take all day, but you're back by 3 in the afternoon. And It's a leisurely place. It's, some people would say, oh, 35 miles, that's a long distance. No, you have all day to do 35 miles. So you can pace yourself at whatever is comfortable for you.
Yes. And do people wear helmets there, or do you bring a helmet, or how does that work? Or is it even necessary in the path?
That's an interesting aspect. Yes, they advise that you wear helmets. We always bring our own helmets. You can rent helmets on board. The helmet thing seems to be an American phenomenon. The Dutch do not wear helmets. And the serious Dutch bikers who are, on racing bikes, they do wear helmets. But it's almost, I hate to say, a Dutch tradition not to wear it. And their attitude is, we've been biking longer than anybody else. We know what the risks are. But I would advise wearing a helmet. I've done a lot of biking, and it's just a safe thing to do. But it's kind of funny. You can see who is an American bag, who's wearing a helmet.
I wonder if it's because they use it as transportation. They don't want helmet hair.
You sound like my wife.
Well, it's a woman thing like this. Tell your wife I get it.
Okay.
Do you have any favorite villages or towns that you often look back, or you're looking at the photos and say, oh man, I just love that town, or little experiences you can share with us?
I believe, let me see. I'm going to pull this up here. I think it's called Spartanburg.
Yeah, Spakenburg.
Yeah. Yeah. So Spartanburg is literally a throwback in time. And the women there wear a traditional dress. And it's not a traditional dress just to dress up. This is what they've always worn. And it's particular to that village and is evolved over the ages. And it's part of their identity. And it was originally an old fishing village, and they carry on that tradition. And they even have a museum dedicated to it, which is a lot of fun to visit.
Can you describe what the outfit looks like?
They really work on this big, broad collar. And it's interesting, through the ages, it became more and more elaborate with lace. It originally started out as very, very simple, but I think maybe as they accumulated more wealth, they were able to show off their wealth by this wide collar that spread across their shoulders.
And also sometimes you're going to see some fortresses and castles. Did you get a chance to go in any, or can you see a lot from the outside, or tell us about that?
We saw a lot that we saw from the outside. I don't recall going any, but there's a lot of them. All these towns from the Middle Ages had to be, fortified. And the interesting thing in how a lot of these towns are preserved is some of them, believe it or not, were seaport type towns. And as rivers silted in, they sort of got isolated and became a backwater. But it's what saved them historically in all their historic structures. So they're still intact as if they were there for the last 200-300 years.
Wow. And I see too, on your last day of biking, you had the opportunity to visit Anne Frank's home. Sounds pretty interesting. Were you able to do that?
No, we didn't do that. We'd done that on previous trips.
One other thing I've found interesting about this region is you have the old area where the land was actually there, and then you have the new area that you're biking through that they actually reclaim this land from the sea. Do you know, or can you describe a little bit about the process, or did you learn anything about that?
Oh, yeah. Polderlands. Yeah. Yes, the reclamation of land is apparent with these dikes, and they've slowly over the years started reclaiming the Zuider Zee and putting in these polders. And a lot of it is farmed now. And depending on what the reclaimed land is like as to whether they can grow crops to feed cattle or other types of produce. And they're very, very proud of this process. And it's an ongoing process as they continue.
Fascinating. I'd love to learn more about that too, because I wonder how they get the salt content too, or how, because you don't want the land salty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they've had a lot of very technical engineering on that.
Yeah, there's certain crops, I want to say beets and stuff like that can grow in that kind of a soil. And then there's others that, obviously can't. So I think over the years that salt content does sort of go away. So, but we saw a lot of cattle being grazed. And apparently, Holland is a big provider of cattle, cheese, milk, that type of products to Europe.
Very cool. We talked a little bit about the food, but can you tell us about the dinners? Is there a variety? Is there enough food? What is the quality?
It's very good food. It's a three-course meal. If you have allergies, they're more than willing to accommodate you on allergies. If you are vegetarian, vegan, they will accommodate you that way. If you want more, they'll give you more. There's a great selection of wines that they have on board if you'd like to have wine or beer with your meal. I've never had a problem with any of the meals on the boat bikes. I've always enjoyed all of them.
And let's talk about the crew too. You have a guide that you actually went with the guide, but if you don't do the self-guide, the guide is out there, and then you also have the boat crew themselves. Can you talk a little bit about their friendliness, their knowledge, all that kind of good stuff?
Everybody works as a family on a small boat like this. And by the end of the week, you're part of that family. And everybody pitches in. You've got boat crews, you've got the captain, allows you to come up and into the wheelhouse and watch what he does. It's a real family affair. It's not like they're employees. You all work together. And I like that atmosphere too of it.
Definitely. When you look back, do you have any favorite memories or stories that you like to tell?
Yeah, I was just thinking one of the exciting things is on this trip, you get the opportunity to bike across the longest bike bridge in the world. And I have a picture of it, and it's pretty spectacular. One of my friends said, I can't even imagine driving over that in a car, let alone on a bike. But it's perfectly safe, and it's well used, and it's a reason why they put it there. Another exciting thing is came into a town at night and docked there and climbed up the dike. And there's this old town with this beautiful windmill. And my wife took one look at it and said, oh my gosh, that windmill, there's a painting in the museum in Amsterdam with that windmill. And sure enough, we picked it up, and it was just like I have a picture of the original painting and the windmill, and they're like side by side. And that windmill's been there for probably 300 years. And that was pretty exciting. And then I showed it to a Dutch friend of mine, and he said, anybody who's old enough will also recognize that windmill because it used to be on a banknote in the Netherlands. So it's a very famous windmill. So it was kind of a fun discovery. And I have a picture of that also. That's the kind of adventurous things that I love to discover and see. And you do remember.
And often it's those little surprises that do make the trip. It's the little moments that make up the whole thing. It's often not like, oh, this is the best thing ever. It's all the little moments throughout the day and throughout your whole journey.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard of the saying, but today is history, tomorrow is mystery. And that's the way I like the boat bike experience.
And I like too that people of different fitness levels can do this, like you said before, because you could do the e-bike versus the regular bike. Or if somebody doesn't like to bike at all, they could just have a lovely scenic boat cruise for 5 days.
Absolutely.
After 5 days of biking, now you're back in Amsterdam. So a little sad to be over, but it sounds like it was a great trip.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the other couple that was on board with us, they had done 2 back-to-back trips. So that's possible too. While you're there, because a lot of the trips originate out of Amsterdam, get off on one boat and go for an adventure on another.
And they're very affordable trips, I saw.
Yes, very.
You get a lot of bang for your buck and particularly since it's virtually all inclusive.
Yes.
Of your meals in your hotel, basically your hotel or the boat. So I love that.
Yes.
Any advice you'd give to somebody considering doing if somebody's never taken a bike tour and they don't really know what to expect, any advice you would give them?
I've recommended it to a lot of people, and it's amazing the number of people that do one, and it's not their only one they do. They become addicted to it because it is a fun way. And it's a nice way, if you're going to Europe for a number of weeks, to put a little variety in your trip.
Yep. And I like to, you push the button and it's all done. The basic plan's there, but you have the flexibility within the days to make it your own.
Exactly. And they're very upfront as to what's included and what's not included. A lot of times people say, you know what, this looks like an interesting town. Let's go in and have dinner in town instead of on the boat. And that's a great option too.
Definitely. Very cool. So what's next for Jim and his wife?
Oh, that's a good one. What's the next boat bike tour that we haven't done? I know we were discussing, there's an area of the Netherlands that I forget the name of it. It's a sort of up to the northwest. It's a big area known for cheese, and they do a trip up that way, and that would be exciting. Well, the other thing that a boat bike does is they do a thing called boat sail, and that looks like it'd be really exciting.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. So you're on a sailboat.
Yeah, and that's part of boat bike also.
Nice. Very nice. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
Can't recommend it enough. It's really a great trip.
Wonderful. Well, that's the hardest part about this job is I keep adding more things to my list. But I appreciate you coming on the program, Jim. It's been a pleasure.
Great, thanks.
I hope you enjoyed exploring the Hansa region of Holland today. If this or any boat and bike tour is appealing to you, remember to use my promo code ATA50, ATA50, to get €50 off any of their many European boat and bike tours. This is the company that I did my Croatian trip with last fall, and I loved them, so I reached out to them. Boating and biking is a super easy and affordable way to see Europe and have a bit of adventure while you're at it. I encourage you to poke around their website. Again, I'll put links in the show notes, and let me know which of the tours appeal to you. I'd like to get more into biking tours in the future, and maybe we could put together something for the next year or so. Remember, you can always reach out to me at kit@activetraveladventures.com. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on!